Bradley. Hello, hi, everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'm apparently in a good mood today. I had a dream last night. I had a few dreams last night. I woke up at like 8, and then I went back to sleep. And I had a dream. I was talking to one of my old friends, and there was a friend there was a person that we both knew. And she was talking about him a lot for some reason. And she was like telling me how amazing he is, or some of the different, like partly how amazing he is, partly some of the different things that he was going through or whatever, things that he's overcome or something like that. And the whole time I'm just like listening to her. And I'm like, this is a dude that I never got to know by choice. And she was like, "Yeah, like, didn't you know like any of this though?" And I was like, "No, like, I didn't really talk to him, didn't too much want to get to know him." He was in my freshman orientation group. So literally the first week I was on campus, all the way until he left, because I was still there. And it was like first we were in the same orientation group, and then we worked the same job in the hall, and then he became my supervisor because he went up. And then he became my RA. And I was like, what's next? He's going to be like my governor or something? But in that whole time, I never really got to know him. And then I told her at the end of the dream, because I left for a semester. And um, one of our mutual friends, is it weird that you can have mutual friends with somebody that you're not friends with? But one of our mutual friends one day told me, he was like, "Yeah, he said it sucked that like you were gone and that he didn't whatever." I was like, "Really?" Because I guess for the people that I don't necessarily care for, I operate under this assumption that that feeling is mutual. So I didn't think he would really be concerned or bothered that I wasn't there. I mean, does it suck from the perspective of like I was a face that he had seen since freshman year? Maybe. Um, but anyway, it was just interesting that I didn't see him at all in that dream, but we talked about him a lot. I don't know. I think it's time for me to soften up a little bit. Maybe. Probably, definitely. For sure. I don't know. Something interesting to think about. Okay. I just want like one card. Preferably something new, but whatever needs to come out. And I'm using this camera today because I didn't feel like setting it up. So the world just made an appearance with a few cards, but it was too many, so I didn't take it. Should I reach out to him? Just be like, hey, I've literally never expressed interest in getting to know you, but what's up? How you been? Maybe not. The card that just came out, we've been seeing her a lot lately. Upright again, the Queen of Wands. This time with the Wheel of Fortune at the bottom of the deck. There you go. You can kind of sort of see him if I turn him that way, because that's where the sun is. I could turn that light on, but we're using natural light today, so we're gonna have to introduce some angles. This Queen of Wands keeps coming out. Well, we know that she's Hathor, the goddess of joy, inebriety, and enchantment. Um, Maybe we'll pick some different paragraphs to read from today. Here she is. Should I read this whole thing again? Sure. Sing my hymns, play my music, and let my priestesses dance in the temple. I am the lady of jubilation, the golden one, the lady of unending inebriety, the one who fills the sanctuary with joy. Drink deeply of my intoxicating wine. Breathe deeply of my perfumed skin and live deeply the life that is gifted to you. You desire me, and I desire your worship, your love, your devotion. Your worship feeds me, but in turn, it feeds you. That's a kind of Wheel of Fortune energy, right? To be enchanted, to follow beauty, to allow yourself desire, nurtures you in every way. You are a charmed being created from stardust, clothed in sunlight, and blessed by moonlight. Know that your desire and yearning, your urge for beauty, comes from the most divine part of yourself. This is why you prostrate yourself before me. But I too desire, and it is you I long for. The path to me appears easy, but none could be more difficult. To give completely with every new day is my charge and challenge to you. Call to me, and I will see desire well up within you. Call to me, and I will nurture your heart of joy and song. Call to me, and I will teach you the dance of intoxication and fascination. My name in your heart and on your lips is the sweetest music to me, for then I know you are mine. Enchanted, intoxicated by the movement of the dance, gazing into the color and beauty of the flames, every step towards me brings you closer to yourself. Know yourself, know your divine nature, know your well of desire, know the thrust of your passions, and you will be owned by none other but yourself. So now with the Wheel of Fortune, I guess it's coming through in this energy of if we go for what truly brings us fulfillment and pleasure, then it begets more fulfillment and pleasure. It gets us closer or closer to us. And it's not like I feel like we have some like base desires and then we have like actual desires, like actual passions. Things that I don't know. Maybe it's not. I'm tempted to say things that aren't like comparative, right? It's not, oh, I want this because someone else has it, or I want this because it'll make me look like that. But it's those like self contained desires, the things that you want to do because you want to do them. Let's choose a few passages, shall we? In the Tarot Apocalypse, the Queen of Wands is Hathor, the Egyptian goddess of celebration, joy, drunkenness, and beauty. Her cult was one of the most popular in Egypt and assimilated the worship of many other goddesses over time. Here we have Hathor in her most common form, enthroned in her temple with her sacred animals, cats, around her. Her priestesses performing their sacred dance to their lotus blossomed goddess. What if I, oh, yeah, that's definitely not it. There we go. If I turn it all the way this way, you can really see it. But then I should have just turned that light on. It's fine. Natural light today. Over time, the symbols of the Egyptian goddesses of cats, Bast, were assimilated into the worship of Hathor, who was originally represented by a cow. The cow's horns can still be seen on the headdress of Hathor, along with the red sun disk, reminding us that she is the daughter of the sun god Ra. As the cow goddess, Hathor was a mother, representing the perpetual fecundity of nature. As the goddess of cats, she was a mistress of pleasure and fun, but these qualities are no less important than fertility. For the Queen of Wands, a life without joy and pleasure is a life not worth living. Hathor had many names and epithets, just as the Queen of Wands has many faces. She was called Lady of the House of Jubilation, the one who fills the sanctuary with joy, Lady of Dance, Golden One, and Lady of Heaven. One hymn from the fifth crypt of the Temple of Dendra, or Dendera, the center of Hathor's cult in later periods, calls upon her in terms of celebration as Mistress of Harp Playing, Mistress of Leaping, Lady of Music, and Lady of Unending Drunkenness. The blue lotus flowers that bloom at the feet of the Queen of Wands were sacred in ancient Egypt. They close up at night and reopen in the morning to take in the sun, so they were seen as symbols of the sun's descent into the underworld at night and rebirth from the body of Nut in the morning. They were also the more strongly perfumed of the two types of lotuses native to ancient Egypt. The blue lotus, Nymphaea coerulea, is actually a water lily, but called a lotus in ancient Egypt. And songs were sung for the lotus at parties and social gatherings. This flower reminds us of the optimism of the Queen of Wands, who opens to the light but turns away from the darkness. It also represents her all-pervading beauty and enchantment. So that's interesting. Turning from the light, or turning from the light, turning from the dark, facing the light, closing up to the dark, and only open in the presence of light. And so it's like, to see it in all its beauty, you have to be in the light. So with the Wheel of Fortune, it's also this like light begets more light type of energy, or whatever you feed, whatever you fuel, whatever you partake in, you get more of. And so, what's befitting of a queen just popped into my mind, or even an empress, honestly, because it could be this aspect of her, that of the empress, that really puts her on there, right? I feel like the Queen of Cups and the Queen of Pentacles would kind of sort of like, they're a little bit more nurturing or caring, um and so they would, when things are dark, kind of sort of get there, give some attention or be present. There you go, be present. With the Queen of Swords, I feel like she would be present, but not in a very nurturing way. Maybe, maybe not. Not as present as the Queen of Cups and the Queen of Pentacles. I'd say the Queen of Cups would be the most present, followed by Pentacles, Swords, and then Wands. Because the Queen of Wands is like, well, if I'm not having fun, I'm not there. Like, sorry, not sorry, not sorry, not sorry. Now, the Wheel of Fortune, under the Wheel of Fortune is the Ace of Wands. I love that Ace of Wands card. I rushed through it last time, didn't I? Who we got here? So we got four seasons: winter, spring, summer, and fall. What is that? Was that Avatar? I think that was on Avatar. What's interesting is it looks like the wheel contains all of the seasons, but outside of the wheel, there's only one. It's spring. And then Earth is in the middle. There's a very like mid-guardian energy in this card, because it's like we see branches below Earth. Okay, I'm going to turn this light on. We see branches below Earth and above it, with Earth in the middle. So it's like the branches above, the roots below. No matter how well, when you look at it sideways, it looks a little crazy. It looks like a fracture and a rift or a fissure on the side. But upside down, we get that tree again. As above, so below type of energy. That rift and fissure, though, is interesting. But anyway, all of the seasons are on the wheel, but outside of the wheel, it's always spring. And so that, to me, it's like reverse entropy, because entropy is the chaoticness of the universe is ever increasing. Um, and so physically, things either have zero entropy or it's positive. Entropy is never negative in physics. Things never become. Well, let's look at entropy, because something about that don't seem right. But I'm pretty like, that's the definition of it. I'm like pretty sure it's like things never. tend to more order. Either it gets disorganized or it stays the same amount of ordered. And so that's like, if you pull a brick from a Jenga tower and you put it in somewhere else, either it's going to stay a tower or it's going to fall apart. It's never going to be the case that after the tower falls apart, that all of the bricks just come back together, essentially. Entropy definition. Here we go. Entropy is a thermodynamic quality representing the unavailability of a system's thermal energy for conversion into mechanical work, often interpreted often interpreted as the degree of disorder or randomness in the system. Lack of order or predictability, gradual decline into disorder. But the fact that it's always spring outside of the will means that it's always growing. Now, is growing entropic or not? I don't know. But let's get into this wheel. The wheel. And it reminds me, there's a friend I have who would just like, he listened to some pretty hardcore music, and he's the reason why I like Lords of Acid. But I only know like two or three songs from Lords of Acid. So do I really like Lords of Acid, or do I like two or three songs from Lords of Acid? There's also a song following Rock Zone by Raw, and Hawthorne is here. No, I'm not gonna read the lyrics for Following Rock Zone. But there's this one song he would sing, and there's this part that's like, "Get up, you're asleep at the wheel," and he would just keep singing, "Get up, you're asleep at the wheel," and it just popped into my mind. And he just posted something on Facebook that I replied to, so maybe that's also why. And I'm not gonna say she's asleep at the wheel, but it doesn't seem like she's steering anything. It's just like, oh, okay. Another cycle. Now that one song, it's Moulin Rouge when they're like, on and on. Does anybody know what we're fighting for? That song. And when Satina's like, inside my heart is breaking, my makeup may be flaking, but my smile still stays on. And then they're like, the show must go on. Anyway, I should watch Moulin Rouge. I started it one day. I didn't finish it. I might do that today. This is the cult of Demeter. Okay. Ugh, excuse me. I don't know where that came. Ugh. I felt that slow buildup. I felt that slow buildup of like Flynn. I'm like, this makes perfect sense. I should have known that this was Demeter. The imagery of this card is so Demeter. It's so Demeter. Oh my gosh. Demeter is the goddess of the grain and the goddess of the harvest. In Greek and Roman, she's Ceres, and we get the word cereal from Ceres. Ceres. There's the asteroid Ceres. Let's see where Ceres is, because why not? Ceres and Demeter are the same, but that's when we get into the story of Persephone and Hades. Persephone is her daughter, and she ends up married to Hades somehow. And she goes missing. She's with Hades in the underworld, and everything on Earth is dying because Demeter is sad and she's the goddess of making sure everything grows. And she's like, well, without my daughter, I'm just too distracted to focus on making sure that everything else is growing. And so, she finds out that where Persephone is, and she's like, well, it's time to come home, girl. And Hades is like, well, that's my wife. So seems like we're at a little bit of a Two of Swords impasse. And go 2 days later, Um, and so then they make a deal that for 6 months or for half of the year, she's with Hades in the underworld. And for the other half of the year, she's on Earth or above the underworld. Oh, look, with that in the middle. As above, so below. As below, so above, I guess, in this case. Um, and so for half of the year, things are growing. So she leaves in the fall, things start to die. By the winter, they're dead. And then in the spring, she comes back and things start to grow again. And by the summer, it's good, right? And so maybe that's why she's asleep at the wheel, because it's like it went from her constantly being in the presence of her daughter to only being in the presence of her daughter sometimes. And so she knows it's like there is that transition from being really, really excited about something and then transitioning into knowing that like it's going to be ending, or the fear that it's going to be ending, or that like nothing lasts forever type of thing. And so what it does is it takes us out of the moment. And I think the Queen of Wands, it's this energy of continuing to be in the moment. It closes up, and you could say that Demeter closes up in the dark and she opens up in the light. When her daughter is gone, she closes up. But I think with the Queen of Wands, it's about being, it's like it's like a mood stabilizer. It's like even when times are dark, or even when her daughter is gone, that she can still find joy and happiness. And so what it does is it puts us in the space of that eternal spring, because now we're not so grief stricken that everything around us suffers and dies. Anyway, back to Cares. Where you at, girl? Can y'all hear Chino barking? Oh wait, I don't have asteroids on. Let me turn her on. Let me turn her on. Sorry. Google how to turn on a goddess to make her forget the loss of her daughter. Because we ain't got time for winter time. It's spring. We need a good solid 12 months of spring. Carius is in Pisces conjuncting Neptune right now. Interesting. And she's direct. I think last time I saw Carius, she was in like retrograde, maybe. I don't know. Pallas is in Aquarius. Lilith is in Aquarius. And that's not Black Moon Lilith. That's the asteroid Lilith. There's two Liliths in astrology. One of them is an asteroid. The other one is related to the moon. I don't know how it's related to the moon, but it is, and that's Black Moon Lilith. Juno is in Sagittarius. Vesta is retrograde in Virgo. Hygia is retrograde in Leo. Eris and Chiron are both in Aries. Eris is like always in Aries though. Where's Icarus? Hold up. Icarus is in Capricorn. Okay. How is Icarus in Capricorn? Icarus was in like, when I last saw it, it was in like Pisces. And most of the time I see it, hey Zelda. Jupiter is in Aquarius with Saturn still. How you doing, Zelda? Hope you're well. The sun is 3 degrees Aquarius, Saturn is 4 degrees Aquarius, Lilith is 6 degrees Aquarius, Jupiter is 7 degrees Aquarius, Pallas is 15 degrees Aquarius, and Mercury is 21 degrees Aquarius, and it's going to retrograde at 26 degrees Aquarius. Back to 11 degrees Aquarius, I think it was. Let's see. Mercury retrogrades from 26 and a half to 11. Yeah. So, excuse me. You'll be all right. Glad to hear it. So, Caris is conjuncting Neptune right now. That's interesting. Because I'm talking about Eternal Spring, right? Has anyone seen Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind or whatever? I saw it once. It was good. It was a little like, but it was good. And I guess there's a question of the pains that we'd rather forget here. And maybe that's the inebriety of the Queen of Wands. Oof, well, Wheel of Fortune, that took a turn. Because it's like the things that we'd rather not think of, the things that we'd rather forget. And so we stay intoxicated or we self medicate to close up to the darkness and to face the light as much as we can. And so I think because, and what's behind this? So the Ace of Wands, behind the Ace of Wands, there's the Princess of Wands. And the Princess of Wands is an Isis in this deck. Um, because with Neptune there's this energy of like Neptune casting an illusion on Demeter or on Ceres, because that would be Poseidon. I don't know if Poseidon is as well. He should be right. Well, no. Some gods play out a lot differently in Roman than they do in Greek. Ares is one of them. Um, on the Greek side of mythology, Ares is seen as like not great because the Greeks weren't. They were more like artistic and philosophical. But on the Roman side, Ares is like prime because Rome was the empire. They were the conquerors. They were all about that emperor energy. It's Rome. Um, but it's almost like Neptune is working his illusion magic on Demeter to make her think that Persephone is there, when in reality she's not. And maybe that's why she's like this. Because it's still spring where she is, but she's like not fully present. It's like she's not there. And that's kind of sort of been a theme lately about taking life sober, about facing the things and actually doing it rather than putting ourselves in a state of altered mind. Darn it, Neptune. It's like all the guys had a meeting and they were like, okay, so we need a full year of spring because of the damage and destruction that was caused. If we don't have a full year of spring, we're not going to be able to feed all of the people on the planet. So, and Hades is like, oh, well, I rule the underworld, so I don't too much care what happens on the surface. I'm not sacrificing my time with my wife. So y'all can do something else. And it's like they're like, come on, Hades, take one for the team. Just let Persephone stay with her mama. And Persephone, like, well, she been getting on my nerves right now anyway. So I'm looking forward to this vacation, because my husband can do some things for me that my mother can't do for me. And I'm looking forward to time with my husband. So I'm also out. And they're all like, oh crap. Well, Demeter carries, we can't just be like, "Hey, girl, we know that your daughter is gone, but can you like not have everything die right now?" And like, she's like, not even there because her daughter's about to leave, so she's already checked out. And then Neptune is like, "Okay, this is what I'm gonna do, y'all. I'm gonna cast an illusion on her to make her think that Persephone didn't leave." And basically the illusion falls apart and that doesn't work. And then it's almost like if that illusion breaks, and maybe they haven't done it yet, this is just a conversation, this is how things come to me sometimes, I like it. Maybe they're like, okay, we'll use that as a last ditch effort, because when that illusion breaks, it's like her sadness and her grief will turn to fury and anger. And fury and anger from the goddess of growth may be worse than her like just being absent. Cause then at least things will naturally rot and decay, naturally mature. But if she angry, that decay might speed up. And Neptune's like, we could try. I don't hear anybody else coming up with anything better. And y'all know when a bad idea is this, like, even if it's the only idea that you have, it's still a bad idea. And so sometimes it's like, well, if we don't do anything, then something bad will happen. And it's like the one thing that you thought you had to do makes things worse than if you would have just not done anything. But what it's about is it's teaching her to accept the cycle of her daughter leaving and coming, coming and going. Just like Hades has learned to accept the cycle. It's not like people stop dying. It's not Hades is like, yeah, my wife ain't here, so for 6 months out of the year, things aren't gonna die. People aren't gonna die, animals aren't gonna die, plants aren't gonna die. It's just like the underworld is lawless. Without my queen, I refuse to rule. Imagine if Hades had done what Demeter did, girl. Oof, what would life be? People be all kinds of reckless. People reckless in the spring and summer because Hades ain't gonna take them. Anyway, so it's about her learning to live with that loss. And her loss, it takes me back to the clouds and the wreath because her loss isn't permanent. Like that's a temporary loss. She knows that her daughter is gonna come back, and her daughter's immortal. So it's not like she's gonna die in the underworld or something. And even if she did, her husband rules it, so he'd just be like, "Nah, you're good. Go back up there." Right? So let's finish reading the rest of the entry. That was interesting. I didn't expect that. Oh look, there she is right there. Oh, I have the bookmark there, so that's why. Okay. So mankind is born from the before gods, fragment of the great titans that came before the heavenly ones. Excuse me. Yet their lot is gold. Hold up. I ain't gonna be able to hold this one up. Yet their lot is given to them on the plains of wheat and flour, fruit and tree. Through the turning seasons they live out their days, and in their time they wear many faces. Like all creatures given life, they are at the mercy of change. It is as constant and reliable as the earth beneath your feet, as the sun's rising with every dawn. It surrounds you in the budding and the blooming and the dying, in birth, life, death, and rebirth. It is my word and my embrace, my promise to mankind that there is nothing new under the sun, but all returns. I am of the earth and of the mysteries, and these titles are not opposed. I am the mistress of change and have given to mankind the laws of the universe. That change will be your ever present companion, and by the rituals of change, you will measure out your lives and come to know the mysteries of the soul's transformation. For your soul is as seeds of corn, descending into the earth to grow to their fullness, surrounded by matter. Time and time again, they will be freed from the soil and rise up towards the light, there to be threshed and ground and return once more to whence they came. Like the seasons, your soul will always walk a path of change. Descend into the chamber of mysteries, and you will be shown the planting and the growing, the threshing and the consuming. Then you will truly know how to walk on the roads of change. Held gently in the arms of beautiful Demeter, the wheel shows us the truth of all things, surrounded by nature, that ever present reminder of the cyclical way of the world. The force of change is displayed as a four spoked wheel with the seasons within it. Demeter, as the Greek goddess of agriculture, watches over the seasonal changes of the earth and changes that humans undergo throughout their lives, both mundane and spiritual. Demeter had several mystery cults around ancient Greece, although her most well known mystery religion was that of the Eleusinian Mysteries, see the High Priestess, which she shared with her daughter Persephone, Kore. Each of her mystery cults around Greece had distinctive features and took on the nature of the areas in which they were located. In what is that? Mantinea, Arcadia, there was a sanctuary of Demeter and Kore in which a perpetual fire was tended. In the Mysian and Achaia, a sanctuary of Demeter Mysia. The mystery festival for Demeter was performed over 7 days, with the men withdrawing on the third day, so that the woman alone might perform that night's rites. On the surface, Demeter's cult worship appears to have been concerned with agriculture and the earth, ensuring a plentiful harvest. In Hermione, I want to say Hermione, in Hermione Argolia, she was called Cathonia of the earth, and the largest bull from the herd was sacrificed to her to ensure that every farm in Hermione may thrive exceedingly. It's spelled Hermione. Is it Hermione? I think it is pronounced Hermione. Herm is Herm. O-N-E is Oni with the I. I think it is Hermione. Hey, Blooming Rose! Happy birth season, Blooming Rose. I think it is pronounced Hermione. Let's ask Siri. Hey Siri, how do you pronounce Hermione?
Here's what I found from thinkbabynames.com. Hermione as a girl's name is pronounced
Yeah.
Hermione.
Or he said Hermione and then Hermione. Girl, which is it? Which is it, Siri? It is Hermione. Okay, I was pronouncing it Hermione because I didn't want to be like it's Hermione, but I think it is Hermione. Okay, well, what about Hermione? In Hermione Argolia, she was called Cathonia of the earth, and the largest bull from the herd was sacrificed to her to ensure that every farm in Hermione may thrive exceedingly. One hymn calls upon her to also bring peace, so that he who sows may also reap. Sowing and reaping can be seen as symbols of the consequential nature of the wheel card. What goes around comes around. Demeter was also called Orpheros, bringer of seasons, and in the Orphic hymns she is addressed as Goddess of seed, of fruits abundant, fair harvest and threshing are thy constant care. Rejoicing in the reaper's sickles, kind, whose nature lucid, earthly, pure we find. Only begotten, much producing queen, all flowers are thine, and fruits of lovely green. The card image shows Demeter in her aspect as earth goddess, surrounded by flowers and wheat. The wheat was sacred to her and representative of the two gifts she gave to humankind. It also reminds us of the cyclical nature of the earth and therefore the universe. There is a time for everything to be born and for it to die, a time to sow seeds and a time to reap the harvest. Understanding the cycles of one's life all allows us to more fully engage with it and accept the changes that are ever present. The poppy that features among, okay, poppy is a flower I've heard associated with Neptune. So, hey, Neptune, like, let's just give her some poppies. And Neptune's like, y'all know what we can make from poppies to give to Demeter, girl? If y'all don't want the illusion, just give her some opium. She'll be fine. The poppy that features among the brightly colored flowers was worn by her priestesses and was also a symbol of death to the ancient Greeks. See Five of Cups. I haven't seen a lot of the Five of Cups. The poppy was often planted or grew naturally among wheat fields and is therefore symbolic of the life cycle. Of the life cycle. It was Demeter's role as mother that was most obviously celebrated in her mysteries. The Thesmorphia, held over 3 days and observed only by women, remembered her mourning for the loss of her abducted daughter and culminated in a feast for Caligenia, beautiful birth, who is not otherwise known elsewhere in myth and may be another form of Demeter. In Kypros, keeping Demeter's festival was the duty of all mothers who would make offerings to the goddess of the first fruits and sheaves of wheat from their harvest. We might as well just read the rest. It was Demeter who instituted the mysteries among man, just like just as she instituted agriculture, both of which she taught personally to humans. The mysteries in agriculture were seen as I like that though. Okay. So we're gonna take a little break in the reading because although she was like, when my daughter ain't here, stuff is gonna die. It's gonna die. I'm not gonna feel bad. but she personally taught humans agriculture. Now, is a part of that a little bit maybe like, okay, well, we shouldn't know agriculture because, hey, goddess of the grain, you're supposed to do it for us. Excuse me. Maybe not. Um, but it's not like she didn't prepare humanity for her absence or for the absence of her daughter, honestly, because she was still in the same place. Her daughter just wasn't there. And so she personally came down to be like, open at day, close at night. Open at day, close at night. Okay. The mysteries in agriculture were seen as the two gifts, inseparable and equivalent. Thus, she not only gave us the means by which the changing seasons could be harnessed to our material benefit, but the means by which the changing nature of the soul through life and death could be understood, engaged with, and used to our benefit. Further, she was called Thesmophoros, lawgiver, as she first gave laws to mankind. I did not expect justice to make an appearance, but I guess it comes after the wheel of fortune. So, Ceres, Demeter, first turned the earth with the carved plow. She first gave corn and crops to bless the land. She first gave laws. All things are Ceres's gift. Thus, like the wheel, Demeter's mysteries of the changing world reveal laws of the universe. Change is a law that cannot be broken. The myth of Persephone's abduction and return from Hades and the institution of the seasons thereby works on two levels. It explains the endless cycle of the seasons and the earth's growth and death, and it acts as a metaphor for the burial of the body in earth and the immortality of the soul. Now, something in here. Change is a law that cannot be broken. And it's the folly of man, or it has become the folly of man, or it is the folly of man, like I said, in a lot of ways, to resist change, or to stabilize and to stagnate, or to keep things the same, or to return to previous cycles that have already ended, to solve the mystery of death and aging, to cure us of our ailments and woes, to make ourselves death proof. There's a movie. Um, and it's like we can't selectively abide by some cosmic laws and disregard others, right? It's like whenever you call upon an entity who is like solely focused in a particular thing, then they do that everywhere, right? So it's like if you call upon the energy of justice, then everything will be ruled justly. And wherever there is injustice in your own life, you will also be held accountable, just as you wish for others to be held accountable, right? And it's like that Samikiel in the Angelarium, how Samikiel's sword cuts both ways. And if you call down Samikiel unjustly, then his sword will cut you instead of it cutting whoever you called it down to cut. And it's like if there's an energy associated with growth and you have a garden and you call upon that energy, it will make everything grow in the garden, not just what you want to grow. So it's your job to remove the weeds and to remove those things that you wish to not grow. It's not the job of that energy to selectively choose what grows and what does not. Because once invoked or once called upon, it does what it does. And it's man in our many faceted ways that gets to be more selective in that. but still there are certain things that have to be upheld. And so it's almost like, I guess, when it comes to justice, a lot of us want justice in a lot of ways, but we also have to be ready to act justly in the ways in which we may be unjust, because it's an energy that doesn't discriminate. Anyway, and it asks for a metaphor for this immortality of the soul. Since it has been suggested that Persephone, who was sometimes imagined as a stalk of corn or as a seed, was the great secret revealed during the rites of Eleusis, we can imagine that the mysteries of Demeter and her maiden daughter reveal to initiates the soul's nature as an ever changing cyclical thing, working on the same principles of change as the material world. Now, if Persephone was actually a seed or a stalk of corn and not like a goddess, that would be interesting. But it's also interesting because pomegranates are known as the only fruit that grows in the underworld. And I've talked about pomegranates before. Um, in the pomegranate, it was an energy of us like being trapped in the underworld, for not even like trapped in the underworld. It's like you make a trip to the underworld for whatever reason. What's his name made a trip to the underworld to save Orpheus, made a trip to the underworld to save his lover. It's like I can either remember Orpheus or his lover. I can very rarely remember both of them. But it's like he didn't die. So Hades had no rule over his soul. No, that's typically why you have Cerberus at guarding the gates of the underworld, so you don't have people just walking in and making demands of Hades where Hades has no power over them, because it's a bit of an unfair dynamic. But if you want something from him, then hey, he has the whatever. And with the story of Orpheus, he used his lyre to put Cerberus to sleep, and he conquered all of the gateways, guarded the security measures of the underworld to prevent the living from coming down there or whatever. And he makes it all the way to Hades, and he's like, "I want my lover," and he's like, "Okay, you can have her if you can get her out of here and not turn back." Now she was a ghost. She was incorporeal, so she made no sound. She made no noise. He just had to trust that she was behind him. And it's like, when you're in that space, it's easy to be like, wait, like, what if I leave? What if I go all the way back? What if I honor our agreement, but it's just me like being a fool? What if I'm the fool? Like, I can't even, like, there's no way for me to even know that she's behind me. What if he just told me that to get me to leave? And so, right before the finish line, he turns around to make sure, right before the finish line, he turns around to make sure that she's there, and she is, but she's immediately sent back to the underworld because he violated their agreement. And so it's just like the element of trust with spirit. It's like there's no, it's like it can, a lot of times when things are moving in unseen ways, or when we're told something, there's no physical way to really make sure that in 15 days I am, or within 15 to 45 days, let's make a window. In 15 to 45 days, I will get what it is that I need. So when it comes to that 14th day, or when it's like the 20th day, and you don't have whatever, or there's not as much evidence, then you start to like slip back into whatever it is that you know that you're not supposed to be doing to ensure that you get where you need to be to accept what it is. But anyway, coming all the way back, because we didn't have to go there, the metaphor that came to me, it was that like we were in the underworld, but somehow it's like we were down there for so long that we forgot that we didn't actually die. So we forgot that whatever little supervisor person thing they got down there was like giving us orders, and we're doing it because we forget that they have no rule over us, and they're not going to be like, "Hey, like, you didn't actually die, you don't have to listen to me, you don't have to listen to what I say, but I'm going to treat you like I treat the people who actually died." They're not going to say that. Everything takes 40 days, 40 days and 40 nights. That's what it was in the Bible. Um, but they're not going to tell you that. But it's like one day. But the thing was, you couldn't eat the fruit of the underworld either. And the pomegranate is the only thing that grows in the underworld. And since you're not dead, you get hungry. That's the thing. So it's like, that's how the metaphor came to me at first. It was like you had gone down there and the energy of the underworld enticed you with the pomegranate because again you're alive, so you still have to eat. Even though you're in the underworld, you don't have the appetite of a ghost, or an incorporeal being. um and so you take the fruit. Now if you eat the fruit, you're theirs. Um, but you take the fruit and they assume that you eat it. And so that's when they start to order you around. Maybe you're looking for something in the underworld. Maybe you're one of the people who guide lost souls or something like that. So every now and then you dip into the dark to find a light that is capable of, that is needed on this side, we'll say, right? Like an Archangel of Mysteries type of energy. Speaking of mysteries, and she's the King of Pentacles in the SKT. Um, but anyway, and so it's like you're getting ordered one day, and then your opportunity to leave the underworld comes. And you go for it, and someone's like, "You can't leave. What are you doing? Like, you belong to us." And you're like, "I didn't die." And they're like, "We know you didn't die, but you ate the fruit. And you didn't know that if you ate the fruit, that you'd be trapped down here." And you're like, "Ha, joke's on you. I didn't eat the fruit. Here, just thinking pomegranate." And then you throw it in their face and you leave, and then everybody's shook and you're victorious. I don't know. Um, but that's what happens like when you don't look back. And I think that's, I don't know, that's with this Queen of Wands upright today, and with this eternal spring, like we have seasons inside the wheel, but outside of the wheel, everything is always spring. The seasons themselves are contained. And while there are certain universal laws, there are also like jurisdictions in which they apply, or ways in which they apply. So while they are inviolable laws, why does it feel like we looking for like loopholes or something? While they are inviolable laws, is that the word I want? Let's ask Siri. Hey Siri, define inviolable. I don't know. I don't think that's the word I want.
One sec.
Come on, Siri, hurry up. Siri ain't gonna
Still
do
on
it.
it.
Mm-hmm. Define inviolable.
On it.
I'm gonna have to look it up. I'm just gonna have to go to Google. Okay. It might be the word I want. Because I'm thinking of like if something is viable, then it's like applicable, right? So if it's inviable, then it's not applicable? Not viable. Yeah. So it's not, inviable isn't what I want. Is it ineffable? Inviolable. I think inviolable is the word I wanted. Yeah, inviolable, not inviolable. 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 There we go. I know how to spell some things. Never to be broken, infringed, or dishonored. There we go. It's inviolable. Inviolable. I messed up again. While there are certain inviolable laws, there is also the context, or a context in which they may not necessarily apply. And so it's almost like if we're aware of the cycles. No, this is, oh my gosh, this is getting into like accounting territory. because it's almost like it's budgeting the growth, the life, the decline, and the death. And within a certain amount of time, that has to be balanced. But with this Queen of Wands upright energy, when we, it's like, let's say that all flowers have a certain amount of daylight that they're able to tolerate before the cells give out. They can only handle so much light, or they can only work so much before they die. They say that all animals have a certain number of heartbeats, and once you reach that number of heartbeats, you die on average. And that's why some animals live a lot longer than others, because their heart beats slower or their heart beat faster. And when the heart beats faster and you got 10 beats, if you go 10 beats a second, then you got a second long life. If you got to beat a decade, that's 100 years. Um, but and so it's like there's the mysterious blue lotus that is the only flower that is like seemingly undying. And but we don't know that all plants have, it's not even okay, let me rework the metaphor. They can only be open for so long, right? Because as long as they're open and exposed, regardless of if there's light or not, they're exposed to the elements, and there's a certain amount of wear and tear that they can, within their own cellular resources and structures, accommodate. And then after they run out, they can't repair themselves anymore. And so what they do is, to maximize growth and extend their light, they only open up in sunlight. They only open up when there's the opportunity for growth, and then they close when that opportunity is gone. And so they're able to live longer because they're not constantly open. It's like their battery isn't constantly depleting. The battery is only being used when there's the opportunity for growth. So they're not only the longest living, but also the tallest. We're talking about trees. And that's what this is trying to teach us. It's this our actuarial energy of like, as long as I am dying in these ways, or as long as these things are being transformed, then I can continue growing in other ways. And honestly, the intersection of these two things is us not, it's us letting go of the things that it's time to let go of. And it's us challenging ourselves in the ways that we need to be challenged. And so then the seed can push through the earth. We can blossom. We can come into our next chapter, our next cycle. We can grow in that abundance. And when it's time to let something go, we can let it go. And so we continue to grow and we continue to rise, instead of stubbornly trying to stay fixed, instead of doing that human thing that we do, where we want everything to remain the same, where we so desperately fight against the cycles of nature. We let go of what we need to let go of in the time that it's time to let go. And we leap when it's time to leave. We cut out the waste in the middle. We close when it's time to close, and we open when it's time to open. That was such a roundabout way to get there. But it was quite interesting for me in the middle. I love it. So that's what this is today. And that's the message that I've talked about before in a video that has either seasons or cycles in the title somewhere. It's really abiding by that season, and to make sure that we're constantly growing. But again, it's the actuarial energy is beyond that, because it's an energy that's constantly planting seeds, it's constantly nurturing seeds, it's constantly reaping, and it's constantly like letting the land rest. It reminds me of the card in the Disology, a land where all four seasons reside. And it's this energy of like, if you have a garden, there's the summer section, the winter section, the spring section, and the fall section. But you can't move the land unless you have the land, unless you like have pots where you move all the pots to their corresponding sections and you do this thing so that you're constantly whatever it's maintained. Everything has to be accounted for either way. The way in which you do it is up to you. That's the creativity of the human soul, interlocking and combining with the power of its divine creative nature. But those inviolable laws must be maintained. So everything can always be growing. And death or decay can't be rid of can't you can't be completely rid of them either. But we have the ability to listen and to flow and to be in that state of constant spring. The unspoken thing is if it's constantly spring, it's also constantly winter, constantly fall, and constantly summer. And that's where it's like, well, how can it be all at once? Well, if you live in an area of the world where you experience multiple seasons in one day, that's Demeter giving you a clue in nature that you can use on your own soul and your own growth. It's like you wake up and it's freezing cold, then it gets really hot, then it's like humid and rainy, and then it's like what? Indiana for sure was like that. Illinois can sometimes be like that a little bit, but in Indiana, it was like to the extreme. Right in Illinois, it's like there's a little bit of gray in between, or you might get like 2 seasons in a day. Indiana's like 3 or 4 sometimes. I like that actually. I love these cards. I love this message. Yes, I'm done with all the other stuff. I'm curious what's at the top of the deck though. The top of the deck is the Nine of Swords. You can't really see the dude up there. There you go. Yeah, you can. I think with this Nine of Swords energy, to do what it is that I'm talking about doing, it also requires us to constantly it's a constant Nine of Swords energy too. It's a constant Nine of Wands, constant Nine of Swords, constant Nine of Cups, and Nine of Pentacles. Now we tend to focus on the Nine of Cups, Nine of Pentacles, and want not so much of the Nine of Swords and the Nine of Wands. But those are also necessary. And it's like when I was saying, like, you can't call down the energy of justice and then be like, oh, I want you to preside over that. Like, don't worry about all of this other stuff. Like, you only focus on that. And justice is like, no, anything within my realm of purview, anything that enters my area is set right, is set just. And since you called me down, guess who's at the center of all of this? You are. It's the need to constantly face ourselves as well if we seek to be in this. But that's not a surprise for anyone who seeks such a spiritual path, right? I feel like there are a lot of texts that's like, we got to constantly be facing the shadow of ourselves. It is what it is, right? And I talked about that. The things that need to be let go of, we let them go so that things can continue to thrive and grow. But that's what I got for today. I The aim wasn't necessarily to be on here for an hour. I was like, I'll pull just one card. So maybe it'll be like 20, 25, 30 minutes, not the longest. Nope, still got an hour. But hey, you know what? For anyone who watches me, I'm sure you've come to expect it by now. It's a surprise when it's a 10-minute video. It's a surprise when it's only half an hour, honestly. All right, so that's what I got for today. I hope you'll have a good whatever, whenever. It was really good to see Zelda and Bloom and Rose. There are lots of things that are always possible, but it's like sometimes we wait for things to go on sale, right? And we have the funds to get what it is that we want. We have the funds to get what it is that we need, but we're looking for a deal. We don't have to spend as much. Like we want to bargain down the price, and it's something that like we're not willing to pay full price for. But there are certain things that it's like if it only appreciates in value, you may never see it on sale. And you're like, it's even more now than it was before. And so at whatever time, at any time, we just have to do it. We just have to pay the price. It's never necessarily going to be easier. And so if we're waiting on the right time to do something or start something, if it wasn't the new year, if it's not a new day, like if it's not the top of the week or a new year or whatever, then what more of a situation or circumstances is there to begin or is there to start? Because the troubles and the worries and the woes of life may be there until we do what it is that we need to do to handle and address them. If you don't take care of it, it never goes anywhere. So I don't know. When do we begin, I guess? Or when do you begin is the question today. And it is possible for life to always be gorgeous. But at the same time, we have to always be looking at and handling and addressing the things that are not. And it's going to ebb and flow. I don't think it's like it's necessarily always going to be extremely heavy, but if we have a backlog of things that we have to take care of, then it's going to be difficult for a minute because we're catching up before it's easy. But there are still moments and opportunities for pleasure and the fulfillment of desire and happiness. But we have to be brave enough to take them and brave enough to lay to bed the things that we need to be, are the things that need to be laid to bed. And maybe that's what the clouds, what the wreath was all about yesterday. Maybe that's why it's temporary. I don't know. All things in balance. We can do a spring summer growth, winter fall decay type thing, or we can be like Indiana and have all four seasons in a day every day and wear layers. When you live in an area like that and it's that time of year where you get multiple seasons in a day, you wear layers. So when it's colder, you put more layers on. When it's warmer, you take more layers off. There is a little bit of an inconvenience of carrying them maybe, but you'll be prepared for whatever the weather of the day gives you. And sometimes it's like almost like you got to pick your battles, but it's like at the same time, it's like beggars can't be choosers type of energy. And maybe that's why we kind of sort of struggle the way we do, because it's like we want all of what we want and we don't want to have to do anything to get it. And it's like, okay, that is not realistic where you are. And if you want to make that your reality, then there's some stuff that you're going to have to do to align to that, to remagnetize yourself, realign yourself to that set of possibilities. 'Cause I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I don't think we reach that point by not doing anything either. But what do I know? Maybe you can if you manifest it hard enough. Who knows? All right. Well, I'll catch y'all later. It's 2:34 on the clock. That's time, right? I'll be back tomorrow pulling another one of these. I love this deck so much. Oh, I'm so glad I can read now.